And we are here for another episode of Clone Wars Conversations. This is Season 4, Part 1. We are tackling episodes 1 to 10. That's the Water War arc, 3 kind of middling episodes, and the Umbaran arc with Krell. Some very big hitters in this episode. And if you haven't joined us before, my name is Mike. I'm with Maff and with Dave. Dave has seen all of Clone Wars once before. I've seen it twice before and bits and pieces. Maff has never seen it before. So we're not going to be talking about future episodes of spoilers and things. We are going to be taking it like it's Maff's first time because he's the Clone Wars virgin here. If you haven't tuned in before, we go through each of the episodes, generally in arcs. We talk about them a little bit, delve deep into certain themes, characters, and compare it to other parts of the Clone Wars and the Star Wars galaxy. And if you haven't tuned into any of our other shows, go do that and check out Star Wars Rebels Reviewed because we already tackled all of Star Wars Rebels. So we're going to dive right on in because this season, Season 4, is all chronological, which is delightful as opposed to some of the prior seasons that we've been delving into with a lot of random episodes. But from here, it's pretty smooth sailing. Chronologically, at least. But before we delve into the individual episodes and the arcs that we'll kind of do in 3 chunks, I imagine, let's just get the thoughts on my 2 co-hosts of what the kind of vibe was of this season so far. So, Dave, let's go with you first. Season 4, what did you remember, with no spoilers, and then how has the first part gone for you in general?
Well, I was just thinking to myself, as you were saying, we're not going to spoil any future episodes. After watching this half of the season, I wonder how much I could spoil if I wanted to, because I don't actually remember that much.
I keep having to look up episodes. I can go on IMDb and go, when's this specific episode happening? Where's the continuation from all that mall stuff at the end of Season 3? Where's that at the moment? I thought that was quite soon in Season 4. No, it's not. Sorry.
Yeah, and I keep getting surprised. I think for Season 3, as well, it was the same. In my mind, I'm thinking it's a linear path. You start with Season 1, Season 2 gets a bit better, Season 3 gets a bit better. And I remember saying to you, some of the Season 4 stuff is my favourite Clone Wars, even after I'd watched all of it. And so I guess I'd look back with tinted glasses, and it's not a linear path. You know, there are some great episodes, but there's some shockers as well. And honestly, the first half of what we're going to discuss, like or not quite half, but 1 to 6, I could never watch them again, and I wouldn't feel like I'd miss anything in my life. I thought they were rubbish, and those would not be enough to make me want to keep watching Clone Wars. But then it switches. When you get to the Umbara stuff, I'm like, I remember now. This is why I love this season. And that, it's night and day. Like, I mean, even the fact that you've got, like, they're almost trying to recreate droids with C-3PO and R2-D2. It was like a droids episode. Yeah, but just with different animation. And I'm like, what the fuck is this doing here? Like, what are you doing? Get off my screen, you know?
There's a lot to say on those droid ones, but I'm like you. I remember thinking Season 4 for me, I was like, Season 4 of Breaking Bad, Season 4 of Clone Wars. I'm like, they're the top tier. I'm looking at the episodes and I'm like, I don't think it is. I think this is the problem. And this is why when I say to people, everyone's entitled to their opinion, Rebels for me is better. It is linear. Rebels gets better and better and better and better. Apart from the Season 2 finale, which I think is very hard to top, but there's a few episodes in Season 3 and 4, which I think can go for tat for that. Generally, Rebels it starts pretty good and gets better and better and better. And by the end, Season 4, every single episode's phenomenal. This is like, and also, I won't say anything about Season 4 to spoil with Maff, but in Season 7, Season 7 is just 3 arcs, the last season of the Clone Wars, okay? One of the arcs is really good. One of the arcs is one of the greatest things I've ever seen in my life. And one of the arcs, you're like, what is this? And it goes on for ages. And I'm like, and I'm looking in the rest of Season 4 and bits of Season 5, and I'm like, surely there's one season where there's just incredible episodes throughout. No. For every great 4-episode arc or 3-episode arc, or even in Season 2, where you had the Geonosis arc, there was like 5 episodes. It was over Season 2 at the start. Yeah, I think it was. And it was like, that was phenomenal. And then shortly after that, I was like, yeah, here's a couple of crappy ones. So, Maff, what did you think? Because you're going in this with fresh eyes. Because we've been building up saying, Season 4 is so amazing. And then, how have you felt of these 10 episodes so far?
I think, the first 3 episodes, because I've just finished the Vader comics.
Yes.
It ties in really well. And I actually really enjoyed kind of seeing, what's he called now? Is it
Lee-Char?
Lee-Char, kind of how he, obviously in the Vader comics, you see him as he's a lot older. But I quite enjoyed that arc. I actually thought that was quite a good way of, where he's starting. I thought, yeah, okay, we're back into it. And then it just fell off a cliff. Shadow Warriors was all right. Dave's favourite character, Jar Jar's in there.
Fucking hate him. In one of these, they're going to kill him, I'm sure.
He's still alive past episode 6, I'm afraid.
It was amusing because as soon as he came on screen, I was like, oh, I kind of rubbed my hands here from Dave's going to love this. It's like them bits where when the VHS, when Chris stitches Dave up and he's like, I just like to know that you're watching this, and even though it's really shit, the fact that you hate watching, like what was it this morning?
Cheers for that, Maff. I already get it from Chris.
But yeah, Jar Jar appears, and I thought, oh, right, okay. It felt like they toned Jar Jar down a bit, but anyway, we'll get into that. And then we get the droids, and it's like, the more I see 3PO, the more I hate him. And that, and to be fair, R2, I think having Chopper and was it
BT1 from
BT1,
the Afra and Darth Vader comics, yeah.
I think R2's starting to grind me a little bit as well now. I don't think he's as good as what he used to be, or as what I used to think. Yeah. So, but then we get to the Umbra arc, and it was like, wow. And it wasn't until after I'd watched it, I went on IMDb. It's like the last step, the last episode that we're doing, 10, is like top rated, and I see why. Mm-hmm. To be fair, I mean, I started watching the Umbra. I really cocked up my watching this time. I watched them over 2 days. And that, because just one of them.
So last time you watched them all really early.
Yes.
And then, we've all done it differently, though, because there was one week where Dave did it, and he watched all of them immediately, and then he had to rewatch some of them to remind himself.
I was meant to start watching it during the week, and I got poorly at the start of the week, and George was poorly, and it's just, and then I think I watched some of them on Friday night, and then we're going to watch some more on Saturday, and then some more on Sunday, and then Disney decided it didn't want to work for me Saturday night, so it was just spinning round and round and round. So I started watching a couple on my phone, and it's like, I can't do this. Sunday morning, I'm watching the first of the Umbra arc, and I must have been interrupted 5, 6, 7 times. So I just like, put that aside, wait until everyone's gone to bed, and I'll watch it then. And I restarted it, and to be fair, it kind of started a bit slow, but then it kind of picks up, and then it's like, now I see why people like season 4 and that, and if it gets better from here onwards and that, but that little arc there's issues, which there always are with the Jedi and that, but I think if I hadn't got to that part, if I'd been watching it in real time, I do worry once we hit them droids episodes, I might have thought, I don't know if I can be bothered with this.
That's the thing with Clone Wars. That's why a lot of people go, when people are, I'm really liking the Star Wars movies, I want to get into more content. People go, watch Clone Wars. And I'm always like, don't watch Clone Wars, for fuck's sake. Like, the amount of people I know, either friends of mine who are super into Star Wars and like Force Awakens and things came out, or like even people who are like on online forums, or people who've read some of the comics and things, and they've read a bit of Legend stuff, Heir to the Jedi and things, and then they kind of got back into Star Wars, and everyone's like, yeah, watch Clone Wars. And everyone, even Jack of Back to Filmography and part of the Comics Emotion family, I don't think he's even finished Clone Wars. I think he started it and stopped it like so many times because he's like, I just can't get through it. Because there's so many episodes and so many of them are crap. But I'm just looking at season 4, part 2. And I remember, it's kind of almost jumping to the end, but I was trying to work out how we would do the next part, because there's another 12 episodes, and I couldn't decide if to do half or not. But the problem is that there's quite a lot of arcs again. So I don't know if we're just going to bomb through it or if we'll figure it out. We'll probably just watch them and then kind of figure off air if we're going to do a season 4, part 2 and 3 or what. But fortunately, season 5 is in 20 episodes, and then season 6 and 7 are a lot shorter. But like part 2, I will say it is good. It's got a couple of good episodes, but there's one pretty good arc, and then there's one really, really good arc. But again, it's not that even. I was thinking, oh, season 5, and I look at season 5, I'm like, oh yeah, those arcs are great. And I was like, oh, it's that one. It's got that arc in it, and it's so uneven. But rather than tiptoeing around it, let's dive right on in. Let's dive in. So there's the Water War arcs. There's first 3 episodes: Water War, Gungan Attack, and Prisoners. So in this one, there's it's all water, so there's a lot of kind of new animation. The animation has definitely jumped up again. This is I think the biggest jump of animation we see apart from season 7, because that's like, several years on. And I think the animation looks amazing. We've got Kit Fisto, which is one of Megan's favourites, so she was super excited to watch this arc. You've got Jar Jar in it, intermittently, who isn't as annoying in this. You've got King Lee-Char, as Maff rightly pointed out, and I think I jokingly last episode I said, King Lee-Char, like when you made the connection with the Vader comics, I was like, nope, just to throw you off a little bit.
Yeah, you bastard.
Yeah, I know. So Lee-Char is in this. He's actually got 3 parts to Lee-Char's story. So this is part 1, which is in the Clone Wars. Part 2 is in the 2017 Vader comics. Part 3 is actually in the Star Wars main run of comics in the 2015 run. I think it's around issues 40-ish, 30 or 40. I can't remember off the top of my head. But what happened in the comics quickly was the Darth Vader comics of 2015 and the Star Wars comics of 2015 ran parallel. And there was the Vader Down crossover. Then, the Star Wars main run comics, they were 75 issues, so it was several years, whereas the first Vader run, 20 issues. That kind of got succeeded by the Dr. Aphra run, that was like 40 or 50 issues. And then when the 2017 Vader run was coming out, that's after the Vader run had finished of 2015, during the Aphra run, so you had Aphra going on, Star Wars main run, and then the 2017 Vader comics. While the 2017 Vader comics were coming out, one week of Vader comic, the next issue of the main run of Star Wars comics was the rest of the Lee-Char storyline. But what was happening was we're seeing Vader's interaction with Mon Cala post Order 66, and then what the Alliance are doing around 20 years later, trying to repair the damage we saw Vader start. And I think it's really interesting, but I've said to you, Maff, and I've said to other people, I don't generally recommend the main run of Star Wars comics. Some people do. I don't. Because it's much like Clone Wars. There's so many issues and there's so much rubbish in there. And because every single character, you know they're all going to be fine, there's very little dramatic tension. But there are about 4 collections in the main Star Wars run that are absolutely phenomenal. And the Mon Cala one is really cool, especially when you read that. So I'll give that to you to read at some point in the ethereal future. But this one, so we've got a couple of cool things in there. You've got Ackbar, who pops up. His first name is Gail Ackbar, Gial. So he's obviously Ackbar. It's a trap. In this, he's only a captain, though. And he was born around 61 to 52 years before the Battle of Yavin. So around this time, he's about 30-ish, whereas in the original trilogy, he's in his 50s. You've got Riff Tamsin. He is a Carcharodon, which is the shark person. And we get a Jaws reference as well at the end of episode 3. And we also get some cyborg jellyfish, which are not really seen anywhere else in the canon. So that's a bit of information dumping for you guys. But let's go to Maff first, actually, instead of Dave first. Because I want to know, Maff, where you'd gone into this fresh-faced, and you actually said you didn't mind this. So what did you like about this Water War arc? Like, how was it to you in a bit more depth?
I think it shows the battles going on, but it kind of takes you out of what you should, you get Anakin in a completely different environment, and you get Kit Fisto as well, almost naked half the time. I just like the aesthetics of it, the fact that, they were, pardon me, putting a fish out of water in a way, kind of this new environment that they were and they were just going again just to try, play peacekeeper, as Anakin does. Awesome at that, isn't it? And obviously, you introduce Riff Tamsin. Is it?
Riff Tamsin. It's the most weirdly English name for a shark person. All of the names of Star Wars are like Lee-Char and all these fancy things. It's Riff Tamsin. It's like, I feel like it's a joke somewhere.
With his mate Tarquin over here.
Yeah. But, I mean, there is an issue. When he comes on screen, you think, bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
Now it fits kind of what later on in I think it might be in episode 2 or 3 when he starts he's going to town and he's ripping people apart. Again, children's program there. So it's like Dave mentioned on the X-Men. It's like, I would debate him, should I watch X-Men with my 5-year-old, and it's like, maybe not. Same as Star Wars.
Was it the bit where he rips off Cable's arm and starts beating him to death with it? Yeah.
And the previous episode where Wolverine stick his claws through Magneto. Spoilers.
Yeah.
Sorry. Kids programs. But having said that, I grew up in the 80s and I watched a lot of stuff I probably shouldn't have done in the 80s. Arnie was kind of like a super nanny to us at times because we used to watch him all the time at 8, 9, 10. But I don't know. It kind of showed a different aspect of what's kind of going on in the world or in the galaxy. Again, there are little tropes. We've seen this story several times through the seasons, but in a way, it works because, to be fair, this is what's going on all the time, and they're sending Jedi's out as peacekeepers to try and deal with this and that. So, but I think also because I'd read the Vader comics, it's like I kind of know some of these characters. And there were little flashbacks in the Vader comics of, Anakin and Ahsoka and Padme. And it's like, right, now I get to see what actually happened there. Lee-Char, I did like him. I can't see him lasting as a leader in a way because he's a little bit too much. In real life, he would have been killed off probably several times, especially if the Jedi hadn't been there, because he thinks that everything should go like a happy ending kind of story, and it doesn't work like that. Unfortunately, the Jedi are there to kind of keep him alive. Even Captain Ackbar is like saying, look, we need to retreat at times. You need to learn these lessons. But at the same point, he's a young prince who's coming into power. He admits he doesn't know what he's really doing, but he's trying to do his best. So, yeah, I quite enjoyed this arc. I thought it was a different kind of spin of seeing what's going on out there in the galaxy.
Interesting. And then, Dave, so what did you think? What did you think didn't work with this arc, apart from Jar Jar's appearance?
I just really struggled to care, if I'm honest, about the Mon Calamari. I don't know what it is, even in Return of the Jedi, Admiral Ackbar turns up and, he's great for a meme, isn't he? And I often think that is my go-to meme if you're in danger. So, does my bum look big in this? It's a trap, so, I've wheeled it out many times. But yeah, it's like you've got the Mon Calamari. What I would say is, I remember my dad years and years ago, he was commenting on, I can't remember what it was. It might have been Pixar stuff or something like that. He was saying, that's fascinating. Like, how do you even start to draw water? And that shows a real leap in quality and, how they get it to move. But after that 5 seconds of thinking, oh, that is clever, impressive stuff, I'm like, I still struggle to really care. So you've got this kind of, this battle going on, and it's stuff that we've seen before. It's the separatists versus the Republic, kind of loyalists, I guess you call them. And then you've got these shark-like warriors, and it's like, oh god, like fucking, like you say, Riff Tamson is a bit of a weird name, but yeah, I don't know. Just this whole thing didn't grab me from episode 1, and then the fucking Gungans turn up, and it's like, oh, fucking hell, I knew it was coming. So yeah, I should like it. I feel like I should like it because it is these. There's a lot of the politics of war, and also this young leader who's thrust into this position and kind of is trying to learn on the job. He's trying to build a plane while flying it, isn't he? And so I feel like I should like it. But the fact, like someone gets killed, all right, the fish has died, I don't care, So I don't know what it is exactly, but I just really struggle to emotionally attach to.
Is it the Gungans? Is that what it is? As soon as you kind of see them,
No, I think even from episode one, because like I say, I don't know what it is about the Mon Calamari, but I don't feel an affinity to them.
You're mean. You're racist. There you go. Literally an actual,
It could be racism.
literal
Yeah.
racist, not
Yeah.
an earthly racism, like
Or
an actual
speciesist.
speciesist. I guess.
Yeah.
Crustaceanist.
I mean, I will say
Because they aren't humanoid. Maybe that's it. I've just
not
got
humanoid
a
enough, their
bias.
eyes are too big and to the side. I would say that with this arc, I thought it's quite. I remember thinking about this quite fondly, but I think it might be because when I watched it with Megan, it was one of the episodes that she loved because she loves the water. She doesn't really like jellyfish very much, and obviously there's the hydroid Medusas, which are the cyborg jellyfish things. And she really liked the ship. It's called a Trident class assault ship. It's about 89 meters long. It's essentially like a squid thing. It's right I think in episode 3, and they come out and stuff. And in the Clone Wars movie, you see that right at the start when you've got the war on the frontier, that stuff. You actually see this ship. And I remember we watched the Clone Wars movie, obviously a while back now for this, and Megan went, "Oh, that ship, I really like that ship." And I was like, yeah. And I looked up and I was like, this doesn't pop up for literally like 4 seasons. I'm like, but she really liked this arc. But on the rewatch, she liked it, but she wasn't actually that fussed by it either. And I think when people first see it, you go, "Oh, this is different," there's a lot, obviously the character models get adjusted, everyone's like underwater, the battle is different, it's like in 3D, there's like another layer to it. But I think the problem is this seems cool, and then when you watch all of Clone Wars, you kind of remember certain bits about it. But I remember this arc being really long, really in depth and that stuff, but it felt like to me 3 actually quite individual episodes. They were connected because it's the same war, but it didn't feel like one episode ended and the next one immediately started. For me, it kind of felt almost like some of the live action stuff does, where it's a consistent story, but it's different directors. So it's got a different, almost a focus.
Feel.
Yeah, I mean, because there's parts I liked, like, Kit Fisto was cool. I always like seeing him in it, topless and all. And I like the eels were quite cool, but I just, again, it's like, oh, the shark people are bad. Okay. There's the war between the Quarren and the Mon Calamari, which has been going on historically for centuries. I think it's even mentioned in the High Republic. It's mentioned in the Darth Vader comics, because every time there's any conflict on Mon Cala, the Quarren and the Mon Calamari, fight. And it is interesting, but I think, as Dave kind of says, when you're already on season 4 and you've already seen a couple of groups of people having a civil war and one of them's being manipulated by Dooku, and then it turns out, oh no, Dooku's a bad guy. He doesn't have your best interests at heart. Who could have seen that? Well, we've already been watching, 66 episodes of Clone Wars before starting the season, plus the movie. So you're like, I've kind of already seen this a little bit.
Has no one got the email already to say Dooku's bad?
Is there anything else you guys want to mention? I know I can feel we all would really want to get to the Umbaran arc, so we're probably skimming over things, but please go into a little bit more.
One, I did like a thing with Jar Jar when they kind of, they contact the Gungans and they're saying like, Anakin and Padme need help and that, and I can't remember who the leader is.
Of whom, sorry?
Of the Gungans. Is it Boss Leon?
Yeah, because it comes up in Shadow Wars.
Up later, yeah,
it's Boss Leone.
Yeah, and he's like, "Oh, we need to think about this." And Jar Jar's like, "But it's Padme. She would do it." Thought about it. Let's go do it. And it's like, "What? Okay, well, fair enough. Jar Jar's got you back." One thing I did like, we mentioned like the water and the artwork. I did like as he kind of got deeper and murkier, the way that it kind of changed the hue, it got like that darker green to the purples and that. So I think this is a point when I watched it thinking, yeah, the animation's really stepped up again. Now, obviously, Disney, when I watch it, obviously, there's a Ahsoka at the moment showing on the Disney and there's 2 characters in the background, 2 female characters who I don't know who they are yet. I've not looked into it. But I'm looking and thinking that artwork is really good.
That's season 7. Yeah. Just so you're aware, that's what the models look like right near the end.
And also, Ahsoka's a bit more covered up, which is quite nice. But watching this, you're like, yes, they've obviously putting a bit more money into paying the artists a bit more because, again, there's just been a big jump in animation. I thought it's nice to see that, and it's good as well because it's kind of as the characters are growing, it looks like they are actually growing up a little bit. Ahsoka looks a bit older. Anakin looks, maybe it's just me, but he looks a bit grayer.
He's hardening, I think.
Yeah, it looks like time's kind of telling on him a little bit. Whether is that the dark side coming in, I don't know. But, it just, he's look like he is more hardened than that.
Could be the war. Had 3 seasons of it already.
But yeah, I mean, but it would tell on someone. It would, and I do like the fact that he's not still the same, hi, I'm Anakin kind of thing. He's looking tired. Yeah, it's good to see that. And yeah, as the animation gets better and better, it's good to kind of, that you feel like they are growing along.
I feel like the artists might be getting paid a little bit more, but I think it's probably the technology. If you think when the time when Clone Wars started and how many animated movies did you get? I mean, when my kids were young, it seemed like there were no end of other little animated movies that you could watch. One of my favorites was Hoodwinked. Animation was terrible, but I loved it.
Hoodwinked. I saw it at the cinema 2 or 3 times. That's a banger.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's one of the only films I've seen at the cinema more than... Because I saw it once because I loved it. A friend of mine wanted to see it, and then I think I went on a date there when I was really young, and then a mate of mine wanted to see it, and then a different mate, and I was like, you know what? I'll go see it 3 times. I've never seen it since, but I remember really enjoying it, actually. Forgot about that film.
But, it was really good. But yeah, so I think the technology's kind of just got better and better, because I think the character design, you can see there's a bit more detail there, but the actual texture of everything, I think they've just got better access to better tools that can render in that more, lived in world kind of way. So yeah, it's interesting little time capsule to go back to, isn't it? And just because we're going through this series sequentially, and you think, these literally the software programs that they're using to build up these animations must be just getting better and better. Because you see it in the movies as well, don't you? Some of the CG stuff now, you almost can't even tell it's CG.
Well, it's funny when you compare. I know James Cameron and George Lucas are probably the 2 individuals who've pushed computer-generated technology more than anyone. Obviously, George Lucas the prequels, many issues of the prequels, but Phantom Menace undeniably changed cinema forever with the sheer amount of CG. And then you go to like James Cameron, Terminator 2. You watch that nowadays, still, the DVD I've got, it's only remastered once, still looks amazing. And you watch that a 4K version and you're like, how did you do that? But no, I agree. Funnily enough, Maff, one of the notes I was going to mention was actually what I really liked actually about the Water War was the further they go, as you said, the hue changes, but it gets darker, but you can still see things quite well, which is something that I found there's an issue. I mean, Thor 2, The Dark World, that's probably the best example where you go, oh, everything's really dark. I can see nothing. Or Alien vs. Predator Requiem. Oh, it's a really dark film. What, you mean some really brutal stuff happens? No, I can't see a fucking thing. It's so dark, I literally cannot see what's happening. Whereas with this, I think the way they use light, very, very well done. Like, I think this really does show, like, again, how the animations change, how it's growing, and I really like that. I will say, when we eventually get onto Bad Batch, that's going to be really interesting because I just finished Bad Batch Series 3 only last week. Brilliant. Bad Batch, unfortunately, Series 1 and a bit of 2 does suffer from Clone Wars syndrome, which is filler, really important episode, filler, and it's quite episodic. But the animation of Bad Batch Series 3, you're watching it and you go, how did this come from Clone Wars? And especially while I'm watching them almost in tandem, really interested to see where we go there. But let's move on we got Shadow Warrior, Mercy Mission, and Nomad Droid. So Shadow Warrior is his own thing. It's the Gungan leader, and there's like a Grievous kind of trying to attack Naboo and stuff. And then you've got the 2 droid episodes, Mercy Mission and Nomad Droids, which are really weird, really, really George Lucas-y ones. And I just want to say, with the Nomad Droids, episode 6, it feels so Wizard of Ozzy. There's so many bits that I think intentionally are meant, because there's bits where, like, and I think in the first episode it was like these tiny little, the little people of Alina, and they're kind of almost like the Munchkins. And then, especially with some of the sounds they make when they're like celebrating. And then you go into Nomad Droids and you've got this big hologram man who's like zapping people, and you're like, I don't. It feels like when you said, Dave, about the Droids cartoon, I've only seen a little bit of it, but I wasn't a fan. I know quite a few people are. I didn't like how C-3PO blinks occasionally. That really freaked me out. I don't know why they decided to add in.
He bends different as well.
In the Droids animated stuff.
Yeah, no, in I think it's
because I was saying that the blinking in the 80s cartoon, right. That's where he actually blinks, which is really weird and freaked me out. But what are you saying, Matt?
No, when I think of C-3PO, other than him being a dick, he's very, he's meant to be kind of Tin Man, kind of, robotic, can hardly move like that. In this, he seemed to have extra limbs. He just seemed to be able to move. But there's a bit when he kind of bends down to R2 and he kind of picks him up or something like that. Because I think R2 had fallen on the floor. I don't know. He moved more like a person, and I didn't like it. But there was, again, C-3PO is my Jar Jar today. I really struggle with him. That Anthony Daniels, in the original movies, yeah, I can take him there. But in this, I don't know. I feel like you've done it. Please just move on. And that,
yeah,
you're forcing it. That's how it feels. It feels like it's been forced every episode. That if they turn up and they were there for a fraction of the episode, where they're just kind of, in I can't remember. Is it in Ahsoka? He turns up with his red arm at one point.
He does turn up. He hasn't got a red arm, but he does turn up in Ahsoka briefly. Yeah, he's there. He's there instead of Leia because obviously Carrie Fisher passed away, and Disney are terrified of recasting anyone. So they're like, "Oh no, 3PO's just there on behalf of Leia." Okay,
that's fine, but have a couple of episodes one after another as well. It's like
you're not going to have a fun time. There's next season. Next season, there's George Lucas's favorite story arc ever.
I'm hoping it were going to be the Easons, and then that'd be it.
No. The only thing I'll say is next season there are 4 straight episodes. And I'm fairly certain for almost all of them, it's purely droids. There's one talking character who isn't 3PO. It's all droids for basically nearly 2 hours. And it's George Lucas's favourite episodes of all of the Clone Wars. And you're like, how are you watching these Night Sister episodes and the Krell episodes and some of the stuff to come? And he's like, yeah, these are my favourites. So I think what's happening is George Lucas, he's starting to distance himself a little bit from Star Wars. And they're like, go on, George, come on, we need your input, And he gives, advice on lore and stuff to Filoni. But then Lucas like, you know what, I've written a couple of episodes, guys. I've got a few ideas. Can you guys write the script? But here's an idea. Well, I checked the script. He didn't write the script of these 2 droid episodes, and he didn't direct them either. But I think it's just he was like, I forgot how many droid-centric episodes there were, and Jar Jar. In every season, there seems to be at least a Jar Jar episode and a just around the droids episode, and one I'm okay with, but a few more is a bit much. But pass back on to Dave. So Dave, did you want to mention Shadow Warrior, or do you want to mention the droids ones?
Well, I actually don't mind Grievous, and so Shadow Warrior wasn't too bad. I'm looking for this season to keep moving us forward in some way. And whether that's, I've said before, to me, the Clone Wars is really, it's the descent of Anakin. It's to make Revenge of the Sith really make sense at the start. And so I'm okay if it's to do with that, the descent of Anakin, or it's expanding out on the lore, it's doing something that we've not seen before. But if it's neither of those 2 things, and I'm sure there must be another thing that I like about it as well, or just things that make you think. Maybe that's the third one. But if it's just retreading ground, it's like a similar kind of conflict. It's like what we were saying with the first 3 episodes. All right, it shows you a kind of conflict that we've seen before, but with 2 other different sides, and it's like, yeah. Do we really care? But no, so I feel like the next sort of next 3 episodes, it's that, isn't it? It's stuff we've seen before. It's a slightly different story. I don't find that any of them really memorable. like I say, I remember obviously Grievous showing up. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. You know, they're trying to capture Grievous and everything, and you think, well, that's a feat because he gets a bit of abuse for being a coward, doesn't he, Grievous? But I mean, he's quite an intimidating fucker. You know, if you came up to him at the bar or whatever, you'd give him a wide berth, wouldn't you? So, yeah, I just really struggled with these 3 episodes, and so my enjoyment of the first 3 was low, and in these 3 it got lower, and that's at the point where I'm thinking, I am totally misremembering this season, and fuck my life. Why am I sat here wasting my life watching this shit? I really did think poorly of these episodes, and again, if you look on IMDb, the scores are not that bad. You know, for the first 3, it's like the 7s, and then I think one of the droids one drops to a 6 or something like that. But so they're not terrible, but they're so disposable. They just don't add to that lore. They don't add to the, you know, the core storyline of Anakin or anything. So yeah, there might be some people out there that absolutely love these episodes, but I'm not one of them.
I will say that the I forgot to mention with the excuse me. I forgot to mention about the in the water episodes. There's a air quotes plot hole, which is when they activate the lightsabers. Why is there no fizzing? Why is there no bubbles coming out? Because it's a hot, superheated thing underwater. They're aware of that. I realised I forgot to mention it. It's because they said they tried animating that, but it would have taken so long to animate bubbles and hissing for every lightsaber on screen. They couldn't do it. They almost didn't finish this, actually. I think they originally planned for Water War to be 4 episodes, but I think they said the animation was so difficult and so new, and they were on a timeline, that was one of the things. So I feel like Shadow Warrior was kind of like, we've already got loads of Gungans already made from the prior thing. We've already got Grievous. Naboo is really easy because it's just green grass. So although I didn't mind Shadow Warrior, I thought it was okay. It felt like it didn't know what it wanted to do. And I will say Grievous, there's certain things we'll see Grievous in, which he is very scary. But the problem is, as we know, he keeps going up against like the cream of the crop of the Jedi. So when he fights Obi-Wan survives, and you're like, well, bleh. But when he fights almost anyone else, he massacres them. And I think when you see Grievous in action in future content, it will make him a bit scarier. But yeah, I thought he was cool fighting the Gungans in this, which wasn't too bad. But if you've got... Sorry.
I've got one thing, sorry, just before I sort of go across, like we say with the prequels, that basically they were like a tech demo. So, you know, they're very flawed, but in terms of what you could do with CG... it did wonders for cinema eventually, so you didn't get that payoff right there. I actually wonder with all of the underwater stuff whether that's the same. You know, it's essentially a tech demo. It's like, look at what we've developed, look at what we can do now. And it was only when you were saying about the fizzing. I mean, ultimately, we're talking about imaginary lightsabers built from imaginary kyber crystals. So I'm sure there's a way you could hand wave that away.
Even that, though, like that would, because the lightsaber is a heat source, and, you know, you're watching Phantom Menace him stab into the wall, that is in universe. But one thing I'd say which doesn't make any sense in Star Wars at all, and I've seen people criticize this, gravity. Everywhere they go, gravity is exactly the same, no matter what planet, no matter where they go. And I'm glad it is, because when you get into all that kind of stuff, it becomes a bit too either Star Trek-y, or you get too bogged down on the physics of stuff, which I am not as fussed by. But when you think about the gravity, and occasionally I watch an episode and I'm like, think about gravity again, because it makes no sense whatsoever at all. But sorry, Maff, you had a question? Sorry?
Yeah. In Shadow Warriors, it's amusing the Anakin and Grievous meet. Anakin's knocked out, so it doesn't see him. Now, my question to you is, obviously, Padme made the decision to trade. Would you have traded Anakin for Grievous?
I think the Jedi would have, because he's the chosen one, and I think they were, although they kept saying, oh, maybe he's not the chosen one, everyone was kind of freaking out about it, and he got loads of passes for stuff. I don't know. The problem is that there's about 10,000 odd Jedi. As the war goes on, they get whittled down. But Anakin is only one person, can be at one place at once. But the Separatists, there's a secret mysterious leader who obviously is Palpatine that they don't know about. Then you got Dooku, then you got Grievous, and then you got Ventress. But at this point, I think they're aware that Ventress is kind of out the picture. So really all you've got is Grievous and Dooku. And you're like, what? I would have definitely gone, no, take Anakin. Because if we can get rid of Grievous, all you've got then is one sort of leader. Because, what was he called? Admiral Trench, the tarantula guy, who I think is a Harch species, he was gone. So he's gone. All the other sort of big leaders that are in, I think they all get wiped out in the episodes they're in. So I'd be like, well, after Grievous, you just go after Dooku. And if we can basically corner Dooku with loads of Jedi, we've basically won. Yeah. So I think that I would have traded Anakin, and also I like Anakin. I think if I met him in person, I'd like him as a person. But the thing is, he is so reckless and he causes a lot of problems. The amount of wins he gets is not worth it. If it was Obi-Wan or Grievous, I would probably choose Obi-Wan, to be honest with you. Because I think that Obi-Wan, it's hard because I think I feel like to the Order, he almost had more strategic value. Whereas Anakin's like a wild card. Anakin's like a power-up. When you go for like a shooting game and there's like a power-up and you're going to become like Berserker mode or something, that's Anakin, which is really good and can make you win a fight. But long-term strategy is not as good as choosing like a really good character from the start, if you kind of know what I mean. What about you, Dave, and you, Maff? Who would you... Well, Dave, you're quite... I feel like you would make the utilitarianism decision to get rid of Anakin. Am I right there or am I wrong?
I don't know. I feel like Anakin's the 80s hero. Yeah. Like, he is Maverick from Top Gun. Have you still not watched that?
No.
I need to watch that.
I know. One day, I have to convince Megan to watch it as well. So
yeah. So, I mean, I think if you did that back to back with was it called Maverick, actually? What was the latest one that just came out? And honestly, you'll watch the second one and you'll think, this is A New Hope. It's actually the story of A New Hope. But yes, I don't know. You're right. You'd probably choose, if you were sensible, choose Obi-Wan. But no, I think because ultimately I'm an 80s sort of grown up in the 80s. I kind of go for I'd go for the reckless one.
Go for the wild card. What about you, Maff? You asked the question. What would you do?
I don't think I would have traded Grievous. To them, they're aware there is someone else, but they know it's mainly Grievous and Dooku. If you can take one of the major pawns, I mean, Mace Windu would have gone, fuck Anakin, don't like him. Anakin, I think you were I was listening to this one and you were discussing with Mike Chen, and it's like, oh, I don't think Mace likes me. Yeah. But I think you would, it's like chess, you would sacrifice one of your pawns, to take out the king or the queen, I suppose. And I think you take him off the board and that. I mean, you may even be able to go rescue Skywalker, but I would have taken him out and that. I mean, especially we lose. Is it Ross Tapple? He sacrifices himself to take Grievous out, or to kind of,
Yeah, Captain Tarples. Yeah, he's from Phantom Menace. He's the other named Gungan apart from Boss Nass. So he's all the way back. I was like, oh my god, I forgot Tarples was in it, and then he dies. I was like, oh yeah, that's why I forgot he was in it, because he just disappears.
I mean, it's the warrior's death that he would have wanted.
It's a really cool moment.
Yeah, it's that moment of, as he went in there, I thought, oh no, I know what's going to happen here. But at the same point, when they kind of take him out and everyone kind of pinned him to the ground, I thought, right, that's it. Take him out.
When he stabs a thing and it's like sticking out of Grievous and he kind of falls on it, I was like, that's pretty cool. I quite like that.
I just thought at that point, why not just take him out?
Yeah.
And that, but obviously it's not going to work for the narrative. Yeah, that's the only issue sometimes with Clone Wars is there's certain characters like, we know where this is going to lead to. We know that they're going to be okay. I know we're going to talk about it in a minute with the, hopefully we can skip over the next two episodes. But I like the clone episodes as well. And you have certain clones that you kind of, are going to be all right because you've seen them further on. But there are a lot of clones there that kind of, do sacrifice themselves at some point. And although it's just a name and they all look kind of the same because they're just clones and they're
You're allowed to say it's not considered insensitive to say that.
No.
You're allowed to say all clones look the same.
Well, they don't actually because they've all got a slight, tattoo, hair, different ways.
Very tastefully done, I think. The animation department do actually make them look apart.
But the thing is, they're not all the same. They're not all clones. As they're men, and that Rex kind of we'll discuss it. But Rex kind of says these aren't clones. These are men. And he's very adamant and he's very kind of defending of them. I don't know. I just feel that it's they had a chance to do something, and they kind of again plot armor kind of doesn't allow them to do it.
I think the problem is the Clone Wars. I think especially season 3 and 4 really suffer from too many episodes. That's the problem. They've got less than a year to build. It's like South Park, and I love South Park, but South Park, they literally said we can't release episodes as quickly. It's not sustainable. All seasons of South Park now, 10 episodes. It used to be 8, a gap at 8. We're not doing that anymore, just 10 in one go. 10 weeks of really intense stress with a few weeks beforehand to build up ideas, done. And I think with Clone Wars, they were saying like there's certain episodes where they had to change the order around. I realise I've not mentioned this prior in the podcasts, but I'm thinking I remember it now where I think the reason certain episodes are in really weird orders is because certain things were so much harder to animate. And there were so many things. I think actually, I feel like the Water War arc was meant to be the finale of the last season. And I think they could, because they couldn't get the animation done, they basically had to postpone it. And I think that's the case. And that might explain why we keep questioning why is everything in such a weird order, because a lot of lightsaber battles are really hard to animate because you have to make them look real. Whereas a bunch of just droids and, clones just shooting at each other is quite easy. You get hit by a blaster bolt, that's the impact, and then everything kind of flays from there. But when you've got lightsaber hits, it has to be like full body stuff. And there's some motion capture stuff involved in the later series as well, which is really cool. But yeah, I think that might be the reason. So we all really want to talk about Umbara. Is there anything, I will say with the clones, there's only 4 clones that we know have got full plot armor, and that's Gregor, Wolf, Rex, and Cody. Because Cody is in Revenge of the Sith. He's the one who shoots at Obi-Wan. And then you've got Wolf, Gregor, and Rex are all in Rebels. They're the only ones. Now, Wolf appears in Mercy Mission, briefly, because he's part of the Wolf Pack, which is Plo Koon's squadron. So every time Plo Koon pops up, which I love because he's one of my favourites, Wolf pops up as well. But is there anything, before we get into what we really want to talk about, is there anything else either of you want to add about the 2 droid episodes, apart from me basically saying they're quite messy, they're really all over the place? I feel like they're using them too much. It's kind of like too much R2, too much 3PO. It takes away a little bit. Very Wizard of Ozzy kind of style and feels very George Lucas-esque. Is there anything else either of you want to mention?
I wrote down Wizard of Oz and also Gulliver's Travels.
Yes, Gulliver's Travels, because the tiny people.
Tie them down.
Yeah.
And I
that's the thing I was trying to remember. Yeah.
It's they're from Lilliput, aren't they? But I've written it side as well, filler episodes. It's like
easy to animate.
If you get to the point where it's like, just do 20 episodes. Don't do.
Well, that's
22.
what they do next season. That's the thing. They cut down by 2, and the next season's a bit more tight, and then after that, it's shorter again.
It's like Disney. Some of the series that they've done when they've kind of instead of it's got to be 45 minutes or 50 minutes. I think there's some of the Star Wars. It might have been Andor. And they were like, no, 30 minutes. That's it. We could
Andor and Mandalorian. They both, one of the Mando episodes is like 30 minutes, and then the next one's like 50.
But that's because I've got a story. It only lasts 30 minutes. That's what you get. Do that. Don't stretch it out. Don't get it to the point where someone's watching it and thinking, just come on. I don't
learn that lesson, I think, because in Rebels it's 16, 22, 22, 16, and then a Bad Batch, all 16. So I think they do learn that lesson. Is there anything, Dave, you want to mention about these before we get into the big boy?
Yeah, I was actually going to comment on that it is a recent evolution, really, that they play around with the episode lengths. I think the first thing I do remember is Mandalorian, that first season where you're like, hang about, this is not right. They're playing about with the length of the episodes. And if you think about, if you're going to negotiate, you're going to pitch a series, you kind of have to pitch that idea. And part of it is probably, okay, we're going to have, 22 episodes or whatever it is. There'll be 30-minute slots, so you'll be able to fit it in nicely into your programming schedule. There's a whole different kind of pitch to it. Whereas with the streaming, no one gives a fuck. You want to make sure that, if you put out a 3-hour episode, people aren't going to watch it. The Snyder Cut, right? People who love it absolutely love it, and it was brilliant. But you're not going to get so many people going to watch a 4-hour movie. So it was right, I think, for them to try and cut it down. They just did a horrible job. So I think they're playing about with the episode lengths and even the number of episodes is probably a more recent thing. And these episodes 5 and 6 are a consequence of pitching that number of stories when you don't actually have that many stories. And these are probably, not the A team in terms of writing. They're probably like, oh, give it to some interns, write us some stories, stick R2 and 3PO in there, but it can't have any consequence to anything.
And not too much action, because we need to be able to animate these in like 2 days as opposed to like 2 weeks.
Here's your minuscule budget compared to everything else. So I think it's just one of those, isn't it? I don't ever have to see these. And if you look at the previous episodes, like I say, they're hovering around the 7 mark in terms of the ratings, and then these two drop down to 6.1 and 6.2, and with IMDb you seem to have a real normal distribution, so it kind of bubbles up in the middle. Something's really terrible, it's kind of around the 5 or 6 mark. If it's really quite good, it gets up to 7. If it's really great, it gets into the 8s, and if it's amazing, into the 9s. So yeah, I think I agree with the ratings there.
Yeah. I think that, for me, I think Netflix changed everything. I think because with Clone Wars, it was like everyone tunes into Star Wars, one of the most popular shows. We guarantee 3 ad slots, before Star Wars, middle of Star Wars, end of Star Wars. We get, X amount of million viewers. So every episode of Clone Wars you get on TV will give you X amount of money, because that's what we get from advertisers. And I think it was the same with Buffy the Vampire Slayer and lots of other episodic television of just having episodes of the week, because it was like, this is popular. Why would we not have loads of episodes? Because more ads. And then with the Netflix coming in and streaming and that kind of jazz, where now adverts aren't really taken into consideration outside of terrestrial television, you can have episodes that are only 30 minutes or an hour or whatever. And if you only need 7 episodes to finish a season, you can have that, because actually for Netflix and stuff, they're probably like, look, the shorter the seasons, the more likely people are to watch it because it's easier to digest, and also less time on editing and blah, 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 blah. So yeah, I imagine streaming's a part of that, but enough foreplay. We've tickled around it. Our fingers have gone round and round that hole so many times, and we're all just gagging to get into it. One of the highest rated arcs in all of Clone Wars, one of the darkest arcs, and some of the darkest scenes in all of Star Wars, I'd say. And these are held in regard as this moment. It's almost dead in the middle of all of Clone Wars. And a lot of people view this as the peak of Clone Wars. I would say it's one of the peaks. I think there's 2 or 3 more peaks still to come. But I think these 4 episodes, and they're 4 again, which we haven't had a 4-episode arc in quite a while. This might be either the first or second, because the Geonosis arc was 5 episodes, and prior arcs of that have been 3. So it's a nice 4-episode arc, nearly 2 hours long, basically like a Clone Wars movie. And I'm going to say, could you imagine if this came out as a Clone Wars movie? That would be a very different reaction from the audience, but probably not as many kids into it. But I want to pass the baton to Dave, because I know, Dave, you are a big fan. I know you're slowly converting Maff into, clone-centric episodes are some of the best episodes. And I think points you both made of, the fact that you've got dramatic tension. There are characters who can actually die, and there is a consequence. It's the consequence of war. There's social commentary. Loads of stuff to talk about here. But I remember, Dave, when I got you to watch Clone Wars, I remember you getting to this arc and being like, oh, I just met Krell. He's a bastard, isn't he? Yeah. So here you go. What do you want to say? There's 4 episodes, and we'll spend the rest of this conversation going through them, but up and down. There's no specific order. These 4 is one almost movie. Dave, how did you feel about this? What was it when you got into that first episode after the prior 6? How was it for you, sir? What do you think?
So, I mean, watching it this time, and again, I don't look ahead and see, okay, where do certain episodes and arcs start and finish and stuff. So this came on and I'm like, oh, here we fucking go. So, and I actually remember texting you. I remember where I was sat. I was sat in my old house and I was like, jaw on the floor. I was like, this is a switch. And especially, maybe that's why they did it. They front loaded all of the crap beforehand, before you got this, which is so different in this season, at least, to everything you got before. And with the previous discussions that we've had, I've said, I'd really like the clone-centric episodes, and it really makes you think. And this is absolutely the peak, for me at least, so far. And I feel like the Clone Wars does get better, 5, 6, and 7. Consistently, the whole season is better. But I'd be almost in that camp of, I think this was my favorite arc in the whole of Clone Wars. And I was just looking at a chap, the writers are down as George Lucas, because, of course, he's on everything. But Mitch Novets seems to be the writer. And he seems to have done a bunch of stuff. He's done some of Jedi Fallen Order, the video game. He's done some of Bad Batch.
Yep.
So this guy is, I think he's one of the top talent. I've never looked up his name before, but he definitely seems to be on a different level to the other people who've come before with all of the droid stuff. And I'll keep my powder dry a little bit in terms of why does it resonate with me so much. But yeah, I was genuinely excited and horrified, of course, because it is a horrible story. It's as if you like people who are so into their horror movies and stuff. It's like, people who love the Saw movies. Oh, here we go. They're trapped. Oh, how are they going to be dismembered this time? But, it's almost that kind of morbid excitement for it.
Well, I don't look up. I'm very bad with Star Wars outside of universe, just to clarify. And I agree with everything you said there, Dave. But just before I go to Maff, I want to delve a little bit more into this Matt gentleman. So yeah, Matt Mitch-Novets. Apologies if I'm mispronouncing his name. But he's done a couple episodes of Tales of the Empire, which we'll tackle at some point. I know you guys haven't watched that yet, and Maff, you're definitely not allowed to watch that till we finish Clone Wars. He's written quite a few episodes of The Bad Batch. He's a story editor on pretty much all of them, and he's written about 12. So Bad Batch, I'd say, is a lot more mature. And I think once Dave, because I know you couldn't get into Series 1 that much, I think when we go through it properly, once we get through the Season 1 hump, I think you're going to really, really love that. He wrote part of Jedi Survivor, which I think is probably the best Star Wars game I've ever played, bar maybe Force Unleashed. Clone Wars. He also wrote the Citadel arc, which, although we didn't rate that well, we thought was pretty good. It was quite a mature adult feel. It felt a lot more, adult, really. And then in Season 7, he also writes one of the good arcs in Season 7. So he does that, did Jedi Fallen Order. He's also written for Rebels. So he did quite a few episodes on Season 2. He didn't quite do the finale. He did a couple episodes in Season 3, including the finale of Season 3, which is phenomenal, 0 Hour, and one of the Ghost of Geonosis episode, and the Mon Mothma episode. And then in Season 4, he did a couple episodes of Rebels as well. So after the Citadel and this, he does have his teeth into that. He also wrote a bit for 24, and he did a little bit about Star Wars Visions, a couple episodes on that. So he is someone to watch out for, and I'd say the episodes that he's touched, really, really good there. So we never really shout out writers or anything, mainly because I never remember them because there's so many in Clone Wars. But that's a really good spot, Dave. So I will come back to you while your powder's dry. Maff, we've teased a little bit around here as well. I know you've kind of said similar things to Dave. You quite like the clones, but this collection, and you watched it all basically in one go, apart from the sort of false start of episode 1. How did you feel about this in comparison to the rest of the Clone Wars? How did you feel not only the season but Clone Wars as a whole?
Well, this, I think you said just a bit ago, this in Geonosis, so far from what I've watched, I kind of had a top tier. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to kind of say which is better. The Shadow Warriors that they're kind of up against, which as they appeared, and it's like they're not that stealthy because they've got like lights around their head, and they've got. I've read a note that they sent like little robot spiders, which also glow blue, so like that's stealthy. I wonder if episode 7 of season 4 is the point when maybe something just triggered in all the clones where all of a sudden stormtroopers cannot shoot for shit because that little spider that came at them, they're all like, it's right in front, just stand on it. Just and it seemed like all of a sudden that the aiming, what they could do was just went out the window and they just couldn't shoot for shit. But as it builds, obviously, there's a bit of a turn, kind of in the first episode there, where like Anakin's like, "You've got to go back." It's like, "What? Okay, but my men, no." And that's when you're introduced to Krell, and then he's kind of what he's known for starts to get talked about.
And what do you think? What do you think of Krell when you first met him? Sorry, because I'm interested. Because me and obviously Dave already knew.
Well, the thing is, he seemed very hard-assed. Very kind of, he said, "I lead by a certain way, and you will do it." But then, as you're watching him, I'm thinking, I can kind of see because being in the Navy, I understand that when you have a captain of the ship. And that, someone who's just, he takes himself away from everybody else because he has to make decisions on everybody's welfare.
The wider battle.
Yeah. And sometimes you have to sacrifice people. It's not a nice thing to do, but you're in war. That happens. So as he started to speak, I could see his point. But then he was making decisions. It's like, there's something not right about you. I know you're a Jedi. Spoilers. Maybe he's not. But there was something about his disregard for the clone troopers started to show more and more. And it's like, these are grizzled troopers. These Rex is like top tier. And that. Surely he knows this. Surely he can listen to some advice from the guy. He didn't have to kind of take it all on board, but he could listen to it. And his disregard, and then you start getting that bickering between the troops and that. And like, I think Five says, yeah, he's got a lot of wins, but have you seen his, the casualties? Basically we're becoming cannon fodder and that. And every time they kind of suggest something, say, look, what about if we don't? No. And the fact that he was staying behind all the time and that, and they even say, look, yeah, but with Master Anakin, he's up there with us. You will follow him into battle. I guarantee if Anakin had said, look, we're going head on into this, all the troops wouldn't have had an issue. They would have followed him because he's there with them.
Agreed.
But
yeah,
Krell,
Krell, you see the thing is, what's brilliant about it, sorry to cut you off, but when you see him in that second episode, and you get that vibes, as you say, Maff, it's like he is a dick, but you don't know what's
there's
happening.
Something
really.
More.
You're like, you've met people when, Tarkin's a big dick, but he's a strategist. He's very clever. He's, even though he is evil, in air quotes, but he's still, for the Empire, for the Republic, he's a dick to people, but because he's so brilliant. But with Pong Krell, you're like, I don't know about this, but then you see and you think, oh, maybe he's just a coward, maybe he's weak in battle, and then you watch him take out those in episode 2, I think it is. You watch the clones start to get beat by things, and he just comes in and absolutely decimates the Umbarans immediately, and you're like, oh, he's a bit of a dick, but he's a cool guy. And then, as you say, he hides in the back, and even Obi-Wan, who's nowhere near as aggressive as Anakin. Obi-Wan's always at the front lines, unless there's a specific strategic reason.
I mean, that point there, I think the flying things come down and they pick up one of the troopers and start flying up, and the troopers again, they're all badly shooting and stuff. He just takes names at that point. He jumps up, he slices it down, and you think, this guy is very good, and that he's not. I played D&D, and I played with someone who played a character who never killed anything, but at the end of a fight, he would go and stick his sword into dead bodies, muck himself up, and look like he'd been, I'm the hero. And it's like, you've done fuck all. And I kind of thought, is this what Krell's going to be? Is he going to be one of these which kind of turns up at the last bit, looks like he's
Do
killed a
people
few
do
things.
that in D&D?
Yeah.
Really?
You could. It's in character. So D&D, your character. There's certain characters you go on a campaign with, and you can get a character who's just a massive pain in the ass, and all they do is hinder the party. And you're like, I don't want to be with you, and they're like, well, you can't get rid of me, and they're like a trickster. There's quite a few of them.
The amusing thing is, as a player, and that you can watch, and it's like, I know what Lee's doing. I know he's been a coward and a bit of a dick. But as a character, he doesn't know because he kind of plays it that way. So you can't
see him like when you're playing D&D.
You can't react to it.
Your character would be over there looking at that thing, and the guy's in the background. And you go, "How was the battle?" And it's like, "I think he's lying. Roll a perception check." And this guy, I assume, had really high lying skills. So you're basically like, "Check if he's lying," and his lying skills really high. And he goes, "I can't tell if he's lying." And you go, your character goes, I guess he's telling the truth, but out of universe, and that's a part of D&D some people find hard to balance, which is not doing what you know, because obviously when characters have certain conversations as well with the dungeon with the DM, you're like, I know what they're saying because I'm here in the room, but I have to act like my character doesn't know. So
it's just basically playing a charlatan, and that. But no, that's kind of what I thought. But then you see Krell kind of take names. And you're like, no, this guy's good. This guy is really good. But again, why can't you listen to the clones? And why are you so hell-bent on sending them in to die? And that, I at the end of this, I'll give my thoughts on why he was doing that. But I just, there was something as we go along. There was something about him, and I just thought, I don't like him. And then again, I like the fact that you were getting this between, I think it's Fives and Rex, who were kind of like, yeah, but how can you follow him, sir? He says, because, that's our job. That's what we have to do. He says, but this is wrong. And I can't follow you knowing that you're going to kill my brothers. You're sending my brothers in to die. And then it comes to that point where you can see that mutiny. And they talk about this is treason. If we go down this route, we're gonna, but it's a hard one for them to do, because the thing is, at some point they might. The problem is, once people see them do this, the other clones see them do this, then is it now going to become a point where they see other Jedis and start second guessing them and start saying, "Well, hang on a minute, we can't follow you as well." So it's a slippery slope to go down. Well,
there's still more Clone Wars to go.
Yeah.
And I will say that,
it could be a big setup towards...
Well, I'm not going to comment on that, but what I will comment on is Fives is my favourite clone. I love Fives. He's for me, he's my top. I mean, Rex, he's my boy. Love Rex. But Fives is my personal favourite clone. This arc is one of the many reasons why. He is someone who follows a moral code, but he is still respectful, he's still honourable. He's not in it like Hardcase is, which is just, in it for the ride, guys, let's go. And I love Hardcase, don't get me wrong.
Shooting things!
Yeah, and he's not like, because Rex at this point, Rex has been raised by Anakin, basically. You get Cody and Rex near each other, and you see that Cody's a lot more like Obi-Wan, and Rex is a lot more like Anakin. But when Anakin's not there, Rex has to kind of be the Obi-Wan. He has to be the one of like, right, I know we've had, Anakin here being fast and loose with the rules, but we do actually have to follow the rules here, guys. I really like Rex, and I love the dynamic, and again, it really shows the differences in characters. So pass the baton back to you, Dave. So more, with Pong Krell, first of all, thoughts on Pong Krell, and then anything else you kind of want to add spiraling off that?
I think initially you're just wondering, is he like a drill instructor, like the drill instructor from Full Metal Jacket? He's just a bit of an arsehole, but he's doing it for a particular reason. And again, in my thinking about that first time when I was just completely wowed by this arc, I felt like this was half of the season. But it's not. It's just 4 episodes. And it's difficult to really call out specifics in a particular episode. It's just one story, isn't it? And actually, you really could make this one a movie. But I think the thing that I like about it is it brings those sci-fi parallels to the real world. Because they always say, when you get older, you move politically to the right. And I don't know if that is an outdated concept, because most of the baby boomers, in their houses that they bought for a packet of pork scratchings or whatever, they did really quite well out of life. And all the generations since have got it worse. I'm trying to figure out how I send my daughter to university. Not a fucking clue. It is so expensive. And I'm not talking about the fees. I'm talking about the rent, and just actually living. So, but anyway, so yeah, that certainly hasn't happened to me. But when I was younger, you're sort of thinking, well, if the government comes out with a policy, say like ID cards or something like that, and people are protesting against it, it's like, I remember thinking, well, why? If you've got nothing to hide, what? The government aren't going to do anything to you, are they? It was kind of my.
I used to think the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. Now I would be right there. I'd be like, "Fuck! What is in it for you? Are you going to sell that data, or are you going to give away contracts, or there's a bit more kind of suspicion to it." And I think if you think about being in the military, so that was another thing. Like years ago, I wanted to go into either the army or the RAF, and I feel like in my class that was almost expected, like I say, born in the 70s, raised in the 80s in the UK, and the lower class are just fodder basically, because you got no prospects or anything. Go join the army. So I feel an affinity to the clones who are just fodder, really, and for them to, we've seen it with Rex in particular, when we had the runaway guy,
the deserter.
He's the deserter. He started to question, all the things that have been drummed into him. But that thing in the military, you are taught, just to follow orders. I don't know if you guys watch Blackadder Goes Forth.
Yes, love it.
Yeah.
Honestly, one of the most tear-jerking moments is right at the end when they have to go over the wall. And, one of the reasons I figured out I wasn't made for the military is I question too much. I'd be there like, well, is this really a good idea? And, statistically, we've got a 99.99% chance of getting killed when we go over there. Why don't we just hunker down for a little bit longer? Or, fucking Private Horrocks, get over there. So it was really not Dave for me.
I have a cunning plan.
Yeah. But yeah, and I think, but you still have that, you're anchored to that idea that you follow orders, but it's almost like a virus in your brain where you think, but what if the people who are given the orders don't have the best intentions? What if they don't give a shit about you? What if they're playing a completely different set of rules? That is, and when they realize they're fighting themselves, that was like their holy shit moment. And yeah, that was a, right up there, wasn't it, in terms of reveals, really, because you'd already been, through a couple of episodes to get to that point. And so, yeah, it just blew my mind. But yeah, that whole idea of authority and just following orders as soldiers but Krell just doesn't give a shit about the clones. They are disposable assets to him. Doesn't care for them. And you sort of think, well, okay, the clones were bred for this. They were bred for war. So does that mean they've got no rights? Does that mean they are completely disposable? Well, no, because they're living, breathing people. So yeah, just amazing arc.
I think an interesting thing, every time Krell talks to Rex, he doesn't call him Rex. It's CT-7567.
It dehumanizes him.
Yeah, and it's same as, and I did good at learning this, 5 is CT-27555.
No, it's 5555.
5, yeah.
That's why it's called fives. He's just 4 5s.
Yeah.
It's the only clone trooper number I can remember.
No, yeah. I think it's CT-27555.
They're only 4 numbers, I'm pretty certain.
I'm sure that. Well, anyway,
I'll look it up. You have a look into this.
I'm
I'll
sure
look it up.
because when it said it, because I thought, oh, that's where it gets five from, but I'm sure there were two other numbers there. And I've got subtitles, and I'm sure because I jotted
I've got
it down.
subtitles as well.
But anyway, he does. It's kind of like well, you just clones, and the point when Rex turns around and he goes, "No, we're men, and these are my men, and I'm not just going to send them off to get slaughtered," and that. And the thing there with Rex as well is seeing that thing of Rex kind of.
I will say, I will eat my words. So weirdly, his clone designation is CT5555, but it's short for CT275555. So I eat my words. I hold my hands up. You've schooled me twice now in this Clone Wars conversation podcast. Once in the appearances of Geonosian Queen.
It does make sense, doesn't it? Because there wouldn't be just only less than 10,000 clones.
Well, the way I read it was apparently it was like CC, there's CT, which is clone trooper. Okay. Then there's CC, which is clone commander. But then he gets promoted to like ARC trooper, which becomes ARC. But then I think I remember seeing that because I had the same question. I was like, they've made millions of clones, and I think that's it. It's the batch number, and I think for Noah, the reason I queried you, and again I was wrong, is I think because all the other clones have only got the 4. So like Echo, for example, is CT1409. As you pointed out, with Rex, it's like 7667 or something like that.
7.
So it's the 4. So I think what it is the batch number is between them. But I think the vast majority of clones, because I'm just looking at like Heavy and some of the other ones, they don't have that. So I think, oh, here we go. Echo, scrolling down further in the article, his designation is CT1409, but he's originally identified as CT210408. So I think what it is there's a designation number at Camino, then I think they get sent off and sometimes get a different designation number depending on which squadron they go with. You know, like Anakin's got the 501st Legion, things like that. But I do know that a lot of people have asked very similar questions in Clone Wars about the designation numbers, and unfortunately the answer is someone didn't really make it one concise thing, so it's a little bit all over the place. But I hold my hands up, you're dead right there, Maff. Very nicely done. Back to you, sir.
I don't know what I was saying, but I'll just... I
think the way he dehumanizes them, the way he doesn't talk to them like actual people, and the way he speaks to Rex is different to how he talks to the others as well.
Because the thing is, again, he knows he needs Rex. So although he's kind of, I think he's I can't say it now.
Dehumanizing
them. I don't think it's for them. I think it's for himself and that. So that because he was a Jedi and that, but he's a Jedi, but he's kind of going down the dark path.
The term is fallen Jedi.
Yeah, but I think he's doing it more for himself to kind of say, well, these are just clones. These are just like the droids. You know, these don't mean anything to him. I think he's trying to thin out the troops, so to speak. And that if you can take more out, then it puts more strain on the rebels. You know, it's putting the strain on them now, so that they're trying to kind of, you know, bring more clones in. You know, so it kind of helps. You know, it doesn't say who he's been. I don't think it says that Dooku's kind. Oh no, it does. It does say it says that Dooku's going to come in and gonna kind of give him a command post or something like that.
That was more. I think from the way I read it was Pong Krell had a vision of Order 66 happening and the fall of the Jedi Order. He realizes this, and so what he says what he's going to do is sabotage a major war or major battle. He's going to sabotage it, give all the intel he can to Dooku. And because he thinks that Dooku, and I think a lot of the other people think that Dooku is a Sith Lord and he has apprentices, as opposed to it being Palpatine and Dooku being the apprentice. Yeah. So Pong Krell's like, I've had a vision. I see the fall of the Jedi. I see the clone troopers betraying everyone. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically throw this battle, get all the intel, go running off to Dooku, give him everything I've got, and fight for Dooku. That'll either change my vision or I'll be on the winning side when it all happens. So that's how I understood it, at least.
Yeah, quick question: Is there many Jedi who have twin blade?
No, it's generally it's called a lightsaber pike, I believe is the official term, which can either be a lightsaber, like it's like a long staff with a thing at the end, which is what the Jedi Temple Guard have, or it's double bladed. So obviously in Jedi Fallen Order and Survivor, you've got the lightsaber thing, and he pulls it apart. It's generally considered in the olden times in Legends, it was fine because there's a lot of Jedi and Sith wars, but because a double bladed lightsaber is so offensive. Generally, it's considered, because before the Clone Wars and fighting Dooku and Grievous and stuff, the Jedi for about 1,000 years, they only tested lightsaber battling really ceremoniously. In the High Republic, they even talk about that. They go, being a master duelist in the High Republic is almost pointless because you don't fight anyone with a lightsaber, and anyone you fight with another weapon, either the lightsaber beats, or it may be made of a weapon that can kind of fight a lightsaber, but you'll just destroy them. So for centuries, if not a millennia, dueling was just ceremonial. So they were like, why would you ever need a dual-bladed lightsaber? Because A, it's really offensive, B, we never fight anyone with lightsabers, and C, it's all about the defense. You don't need two blades for a defense. So yeah, it is very unusual to have a dual-bladed. It's not completely unheard of, but it is quite unusual.
Because when he popped him out, he had two of them.
Yeah, because he's a Besalisk, and he's got the four arms like Dexter Jetster.
Which that's the thing I thought. He's got them other two arms that he's always got behind his back and going to pop out, and he's gonna be like Grievous. He's going to have four lightsabers, but no, he just had the dual blades, but one in each hand.
Yeah, so four blades. Well, it's because they're quite long hilts, so they're quite like Darth Maul's. If you think about the size of that. Oh
yeah, I just thought it were quite. I thought we were going to end up having four lightsabers there, but he kind of went that way, but.
Well, I was so there's a question I want to pose to both of you, and I'll ask Dave first, because we will need to start to wrap up here, but we've still got a little bit more to delve into here. So my question for you, and this is something I only thought of while watching it this time, is Krell in this episode is shown to be evil, because Rex is good, Fives is good, Hardcase, Jesse, etc. They're all good. But we know in a couple years' time, Order 66 happens. Now, we, as an audience at this present moment, don't know, and so for Maff, at this present moment, we don't know how Order 66 affects a lot of these people. All we know is that Rex, on the other end, is okay. So I was trying to wrap my head around this and going, if you just showed this episode to someone who'd never seen the other Clone Wars, and they just watched episode 2, this, and episode 3, or they watched episode 2, 3, and then this, I'm trying to wrap my head around morally, because the clones are good. But Order 66 happens, and they become the enemy. So in Pong Krell doing this, I don't know how to feel about it, because it is bad, but if you kill someone before they turn bad, is that a moral choice? I know that's a very big philosophical question. Even Deadpool tackles it, killing baby Hitler.
I'm going to try beat Davey. Minority Report. Is that what you're going to say?
Yeah. I've got that DVD. I bloody love that film. Absolute cracker. But like that made me think about that bit. I didn't know. I want to pass it back to Dave. Did you think about that? And then also, get your powder wet, my son. What else have you not told us?
Well, I think the reality is, in something like war, there is not really a good and a bad side. There are terrible things usually done on both sides that you could retrospectively kind of excuse. If you go around Berlin, say, amazing city, but you look at some of the amazing kind of architecture that survived the relentless bombing that the Allies did there, and you sort of think, but we were the goodies, and I do think the Second World War was, especially with all the atrocities that happened there, it was one of the easier ones to call, wasn't it? In terms of who was on the good side, who ended up on the bad side or whatever, but that doesn't mean 100% of what the good side do is good and 100% of what the bad side do is bad. I think it's just very murky. So I think the fact that Order 66 happens later on, and which puts Krell on the kind of side of the afflicted, if you like, I think it's just coincidence. And I think, for me it is, at least. And I think the fact that if what would have been really interesting, and spoiler alert, they don't go this way, but what would have been interesting, if you think of this trajectory, would have been if they'd have just not been manipulated as such. What if the clones were just talking between themselves and were like, you know what, this fucking Jedi, right? Just properly like threw us through a meat grinder. Like he did it on purpose. And then this thing spread like through the ranks and everyone was trying to figure it out. And it's like, oh, maybe the Jedis don't have our best interests at heart. And then, it takes a few Palpatine words or something like that. It's like, you know what, you're right. We're going to turn this around. It would have been interesting if they'd have gone that way with Order 66.
That's how it was in Legends. Before this,
right.
Before Clone Wars comes out, and I don't know if Maff knows why Order 66, so I don't want to specifically. Do you, Maff? Just a very simple answer.
I just know that
it's mentioned very loosely in Rebels, but I specifically glazed over it.
It's a protocol they put in
we'll get that. I'm not going to comment anything else on it. But in Legends, it's not like a passing thing. It's like a whole thing about it coming out eventually. But in Legends, before this came out, when they did, after Avengers 6 came out and there was a bit of Clone Wars comics and stuff, it was just clones just kind of were programmed to and just decided to agree with Palpatine and kill everyone, which after you watch this, you go, that doesn't seem to track. There must be a bit more. And there is. But yeah, Dave, you said you were keeping your powder dry. I want to know, as we get to our sort of final thoughts on this sort of arc, what else is there that you want to mention about this?
Well, I think that was earlier. So the main thing was just that idea of authority and just trusting blindly in authority and following orders. And the reality is, maybe I don't know how you would question it in a military setting, because soldiers kind of do have to follow orders. But then, I don't know, you sort of look at like what happened in World War II and stuff, and you just say, well, maybe if a few people had a question. So there's something inherently there with the military. They're literally, through their basic training, their personalities are stripped away, and they are, it's demanded of them. They need to follow orders because they don't know what the bigger plans are. So all knowledge is kind of compartmentalized. So your mission is to do this thing, and it might not make sense to you, but that doesn't matter, because that thing that you do there affects these 10 other things. And if you don't achieve your mission, then all these other things that follow can't happen as well. So that kind of idea is bred into you. But what an easy system to manipulate. What if you do ascend the power rankings? Then you can easily manipulate it because you know how the system works then. So it's just really, really interesting from that perspective. So that was the main thing that grabbed me about this.
Amazing stuff.
The one thing I did like as well, the very first episode when they first kind of landed and they kind of it had that D-Day landing kind of feel of just kind of coming out the U-boats, coming out the ships.
First episode is pure action. I got it written down. Bar, I think 3 minutes of conversation is intermittent. The whole episode is just
go. It's like watching Saving Private Ryan. That initial bit where the doors drop down, and it's like boom, and straight away troopers are going down, and that which then that's the point when you get to episode 10, and you have that bit with the troopers at both sides, and that realism of, oh shit, they're my brothers there, and very quick thinking from Rex there. But I just feel that this arc just hits you on so many, and you kind of, I remember when I finished it last night, I was like, I just before going to bed, I need 5-10 minutes just to kind of process it all, because so much went through it. You talk about them going through a meat grinder. I felt like I'd been through the grinder myself, because it was like there was so much there, and I'm thinking I can't wait till tomorrow when we're going to talk about it, because it just hit so many points, and even to the point where you've got Dogma, who's like, it's funny, every now and then you get one of these clones who he's not so much wanting to betray, but I think he's a bit of a coward because they're scared of the the fallout of if they don't report stuff. because it's Dogma and is it Tup?
So yeah, I mean Tup is in this a bit, and he is more on Dogma's side. Echo was in the Domino Squad earlier ones. Echo used to be a lot like that. But you're right, there are. I mean, Dogma. He's called Dogma because he's so dogmatic. He will. He will always follow the rules. But yeah, Tup is more aligned to that. But yeah, as you say, each clone has got their own sort of. How much do they listen, and how much do they think for themselves? And it's that kind of balance. Fives is very much an independent thinker. Rex is more independent, but kind of in the sort of off kilter from the center. Then you've got more central clones like Cody, and then you've got people like Dogma who would probably kill civilians if you asked them to.
But it's like you've got Dogma at one side, and then you've got Hard Case at the other side, and that I mean, Hard Case again. It's another one of those where he goes out in a blaze of glory, and the fact when he says, "You guys go, don't wait for me," and I can't. Is it Jesse who says, "If I know Hard Case, we better go," and they set off, and then obviously it blows up it's great that the fact that they can give you that feeling of he sacrificed himself for everybody else, and you're left feeling that it hits you, that in this kid's cartoon, and that what is sacrificed so that everybody else can carry on. It's just so good. It's such good writing in that point that you really feel for them.
It's just so odd with Star Wars, and this is what I see to a lot of people, is like you get moments, and the prequels have this a lot as well, where you get some moments and you think that's some of the coolest things I've ever seen on screen. Like I stand by the Order 66 montage in Revenge of the Sith is one of the most brutal things in cinema, on the basis that it's not watching someone in like Saw be put through like a reverse crucifix. It's not watching someone in Fight Club getting their face punched into a pulp. This is something which is something you didn't have an idea of coming, and you're watching all your heroes getting shot in the back while some really clever music is playing, and it is horrible to watch. Every time I watch it, I'm like, God. And in this, you just get, it's so weird that the episodes before this was like a goofy Gulliver's Travels, Wizard of Oz, almost buddy comedy, but nothing was funny about it, with R2 and 3PO going on these missions, and the only humour in it was no one's going to believe 3PO because they care so little about what he says, and he's so boring to listen to, and then he gets his mind wiped to the end of Revenge of the Sith anyway. And so you get that, and you go, okay, I guess that's Clone Wars. And then you get this, and you go, this is some of the best written Star Wars in existence. It's got so many layers to it, as you guys have pointed out. It's got, authoritarianism and questioning orders. It's got, self-sacrifice and the emotional beat of losing someone like Hardcase. You've got the action scenes in the first episode, which is, as Maff said, like Saving Private Ryan, brutal war, death. You've got, shooting your own men. Which in war, there's historical evidence to show there have been scenarios where, like, I don't know if it was the Allies, but there have been forces on the same side that got bad intel and fired upon each other and didn't realise for a long time. Yeah,
happens all the time.
Yeah, but like and it's quite a brutal thing to hear about, and to see it on screen, and then Rex realise, and the horror of all of them, especially because they're not just soldiers on the same side, as you've pointed out, Maff, in this conversation. They are literal brothers. And the bond they have between them, and you think, God, when you watch the episode, you go, God, that's the gut punch of the season. A couple of clones have killed each other. That's brutal. And then you get to the next episode, the Carnage of Krell, and you just watch Krell absolutely decimate so many clones, and he's like almost laughing while he's doing it. He's like stabbing one, spinning his blade, getting another one. They can't touch him. He is wiping the floor with them. And every episode in this has got so much. And also, I want to say, those giant, creepy, massive centipede being things, which are called impeding assault tanks, the noises they were making was horrendous. Incredible sound design, but it was that kind of noise, but like really low pitched and distorted, and like several like dissonant sounds over it. And when I heard that, I was like, that's horrendous. And I saw them move around, and I was like, that's horrendous. And then you watch them just wiping everyone out, and you're like, there is, like, I think, as kind of Dave said, the 4 episodes feel like there's so much here. This could almost be 5 or 6 episodes. And I would have really liked, I really like the way that Dogma kills Pong Krell. I think that's really well put. I think that's a very clever decision. But I would have almost liked for Pong Krell to survive. And then in the late seasons of the Clone Wars, if we saw Order 66 happened and how Pong Krell dealt with that, I would have really liked to see that. But I just think that aside from basically saying I want more, and like the odd line, Pong Krell said it's treason then, obviously what Palpatine said. Like, aside from that, I think that this 4 episodes, apart from me wanting more, you cannot get better. It's just, it's so well written, it's so well executed, and there's just so much incredible stuff in there. And I just think that you can beat it. So I'm thinking that I want to wrap this up. So I'll give you...
Can I just ask, the plant creatures, are they related to the Sarlacc?
I thought they were Sarlaccs. I hadn't looked it up actually, but when I saw them, I thought that looks like a Sarlacc. So I think Sarlaccs are, you do find them on Umbara. So I think they are meant to be smaller.
Right.
I think they're meant to be like young Sarlaccs, like adolescent Sarlaccs. If they're not to everyone online, I apologize, I haven't looked it up. I know there's Sarlaccs, and they're like a distant cousin of like the Rathtars, which we see in The Force Awakens, and then they're a cousin of something else that's also tentacly. So that is what I thought. But we shall wrap up here. Because chatting for a little while, and it's getting late. So my final thoughts on this is War's all right, middle of the road. I enjoyed it, not amazing. Shadow Warrior's all right. Mercy Mission Nomad Droids, forgettable, actually kind of rubbish. And I was watching them going, I just want this to end. But the Pong Krell Darkness on Umbara arc, not only some of the best Clone Wars that exists, some of the best Star Wars that exists. And this is just one of those arcs that I know Dave and I were very excited for you to watch, Maff, but we couldn't say anything about it because any way to talk about this, even a hint of anything about Pong Krell or clones shooting on each other, there's no way you can talk about this episode without inadvertently spoiling stuff. So I'm really glad you got to go into this without knowing anything. So, pass the baton to Dave. Anything else to say and your plugs? And then I'll move to Maff.
So I'll just say about the cinematography in this arc as well. Just the way it makes you feel so claustrophobic and that chaos of war. Like, it's not like if you're playing FIFA or something and you can see the whole pitch and everything's very clear and you can see what's going on. The camera is right down with the clones and you've just got these.
Gun. There's a couple of shots of the gun, isn't there?
Yeah. So it feels to me like when they got the draft for this script, they were probably like, this is where we need to throw some money. So, and someone said, oh, yeah, but that'll leave us short, episodes 5 and 6 and stuff. We haven't got much money. That's fine. Just put the B writers on and put out any old shit. Oh, Droids. People remember that fondly, but it was shit. Just do something like that. So, and the thing is with Droids, right? It was on after you got back from school.
Mm-hmm.
So it was on when you got back from school, and it was Star Wars. So and they had one Ewoks as well. Equally shit. But people will remember it fondly because it was coming back home from school and watching it and stuff. So yeah, just the cinematography I thought was fantastic as well. The sound design, just everything about it, and I think. Going back through everything the second time, I wasn't paying that much attention to like, oh, it's this chunk of episodes that's great, or it's sort of you're racing through and trying to gorge everything a little bit. But I think for this arc, I'll definitely go back and just watch this arc on its own because, like I say, and you just said it a minute ago, there's so much in there. So yeah. Really great stuff, and it was good to get Maff's thoughts as well. Having watched it the first time, I was glad I didn't come on here and say I thought this was fucking brilliant, and you guys were like, "Oh yeah, it's all right," but it sounded like you really enjoyed it as well.
When I looked into this episode, because part of me almost want to do an Omen episode just talking about this Umbaran arc. But when I watched the War to War episodes and they weren't as good as I remember them being, and then those 3 middle ones, I thought. We can kind of do that because we'll just kind of skip over a little bit of War to War and the other ones because this is just so important and this is just such a mammoth arc. So, Maff, any final things before we get into plugs?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I think we did kind of jump over 2 of the episodes anyway. I just feel you keep saying that it gets better. There's always something a little bit better each season. And this is top tier. And I've just, like Dave says, that claustrophobic kind of feel to it. And again, it gets you that I feel that you're in there, and that, and I just felt that it was such. You said earlier, Dave is really kind of, he pushes it. I think some of the episodes are so much better when I know we've got Krell in it, but there's no Jedi.
Yep.
I mean, you look at some of the best Star Wars that's come out lately, Andor, no Jedis, no lightsabers. It's a story, and we're going to tell you a story. We're not going to do all the fancy, lightsabers and flashing around and force powers. And that's what this does. And it's gritty, it's real, it's a kids program apparently, and but it amuses me. I mean, I do get kids will love watching this because they will see, oh yeah, shooting explosions and stuff like that. But again, as adults, you can think, oh, this means so much more. That this really touches home with certain things for me, and I just loved it. I can't wait till we start the next arc. Hopefully, there's something as good in the next arc that we're going to go.
I will say, I won't say yes or no to the second half.
I know you won't.
There are bits like it's not downhill from here for season 4. Don't get me wrong, but just don't expect every episode to be this good. Because again, as Dave said, like this is one of the pinnacles. I'd say there's probably about 7 arcs in Clone Wars, which I think are absolutely top beyond anything else in Star Wars, bar some Rebels stuff and Andor. And I think this is one of them. I think the Geonosis arc, although it's not quite as phenomenal in certain ways, I just think it's a really solid arc. And the Night Sister arcs, they're probably amidst my favourites of kind of 3 of the top, I'd say, of the 7. So I'd say the best ones are still to come, but I could probably only point to 1 or 2 that for me are as good as this, if not better.
See, I do wonder why, for how good this would. This is where I'm kind of excited for the next part that we can do. Because if this is so good and this was in the middle, I would have expected this to be at the end of season 4 to kind of see it off that way, and everyone's like, "Oh, can't believe that's just happened." Whoa, go season 5. So I kind of think season 4 must end in a better way. Maybe I don't know.
I'm not going to give you any hints, bro.
It's funny because I've got IMDb up and I've got it blocked off, so I can just see kidnap, and that's it. I've not scrolled any further down because I don't want to know what's coming up.
Yeah, well, we've got some fun stuff to come, and we will start watching the episodes and we'll figure it out what we want to do. But I will say an idea I've just had is that I think when we finish the Clone Wars, and we'll do the finale as its own episode for various reasons, but I think maybe we'll do one more episode after the full Clone Wars run through, and it'll be kind of like we did with Rebels, which is just a wrap-up thing of just top arcs, low points, anything else we haven't mentioned in episodes that may come to us after, just because, especially those earlier seasons, we rammed quite a lot in. But friends, we'll do plugs. So you can find me at Genuine Chit-Chat on Instagram, X, Facebook, Threads, TikTok, all those great places. I just today, so this will already been released probably a month or 2 ago now, but I released an episode with Mike Chen, who did Brotherhood. So anyone who's watching can see the video. I've got his book up here because I only spoke to him semi-recently. Fantastic conversation, Star Wars author, sci-fi author, incredible individual, and for about 20 minutes or so, we just talk about live music. So if you're not even that much into Star Wars and you've listened to us talk about this for nearly 2 hours, there's also non-Star Wars stuff that's great. So more Star Wars stuff coming at my ears, lots of cool content coming from me. Just subscribe, like, all that usual jazz to the usual feeds. And I've got some book reviews as well for Star Wars I've got recorded, including Lords of the Sith, a non-High Republic book review that's not Legends about Darth Vader and Palpatine. It's not very good. But we'll see. We'll see how that comes out. I've also recently was on Back to the Filmography, did the Meg. I've done some Star Wars timeline collaborations as well, but stuff, and that will be in the description because this will be out a few weeks in the future. Dave, you won't be able to talk about what's coming out of the VHS Strikes Back because this is going to be so far in the future you probably don't even know yourself. But as of recording this, what's going on? I know we just wrapped up examining X-Men on the Comics in Motion feed as well, so we'll be able to put that in the description. But anything else from you, sir, and plugs?
I was thinking of plugs and I thought I had forgotten about that one, but what an amazing show that was. I mean, I'd seen somewhere that apparently the viewing figures were down and it's an animated show, so like we're doing here, so you'd expect it to be a lower tier than the live action stuff, but absolutely amazing. And as we touched on before, obviously there is a bit where a guy gets his arm ripped off and gets the crap beaten out of him with his own arm, and it's like, so it's not really for kids. So absolutely amazing, and the job that kind of Dan and the Spider Dan and Max did there was phenomenal. I was lucky enough to just be a little part of that. I will say, so at the time of recording for VHS Strikes Back, we're doing Stroker Race, which was Chris's pick, a fucking shocker, but it's part of our Burt Reynolds season. I don't know if you guys have seen it. I'd never even heard of it. But next week, we're doing Boogie Nights, which is a bit more of a famous one as well. And then coming up, I don't know about the timing of releasing this, but Mike, you are going to join me on Chris and Dave's reality TV cast. You are actually going to sit down and watch 6 episodes of Love Island UK, and we're going to discuss it on the Saturday. So that I actually know. So the first season, the first week usually starts on the Monday, so you get away with 5 episodes there, but you're giving up 5 hours of your life to watch.
The week Acolyte comes out with a 2-episode premiere as well, might I add. So I'm going to be on the CD reality cast. Hopefully not the Comics in Motion lot. We'll watch that. Megan should be joining us as well. So I will be doing the weekly Acolyte discussion shows as well, which will be coming out, and you two each going to come on your respective episodes. I think Dave, you might come on the premiere, so it might be me and you recording twice. Once possibly, for the Acolyte premiere 2-parter, and then 3 days later, 5 episodes of Love Island. So I forgot about that. Very good. Very nice stuff.
But yeah, so and I guess we've got Deadpool coming up. We've got the boys, so I'll try and dust off Chris, and we'll try and do a Comics in Motion episode as well.
Good stuff. Maff, what have you got coming out? I think last time we spoke, I mentioned about the Spider Pods with Spider Dan. That was good fun. I know you put on Examining X-Men. Any other stuff?
I'm recording something with Tony next month and that. So
I'll look out for that if that's out by this time. Don't mention what it is, but if it's out by...
Because I think Tony kind of has a quick turnaround with his podcast, so I'm not sure.
He tends to have them catalogued. He's gone scheduled quite far in advance.
He's way ahead of me. Me and Dave may have a greater output, but Tony's normally about 3 or 4 weeks ahead. We look where we release the podcast, and we're like, Tony's episode next week, Tony's episode the week after that, Tony's episode the week after that, and I'm like, oh god, I've got 2 hours till we've finished Sunday before I can get the episode out.
With proper hands to mouth, and Tony's diligently kind of got his episodes all lined up.
Yeah. I'm doing something with Tony in June, so that's exciting. I've enjoyed.
Is that Indie Comic Spotlight, or is that the ADHD cast?
No, it's Indie Comic, so it is a comic that we're going to be covering.
Nice. Very exciting, yeah. And also at some point this year, we'll make sure we do some sort of Darth Vader 2017 pod. Maybe I'll throw a couple more comics your way, Maff, and then we'll have some sort of loose comic pod and things like that connected with Clone Wars. But friends, you can find the details in the description for where you can find these two lovely folks on social media, Dave's many podcasts, some of Maff's appearances, and of course some of my stuff as well. Just subscribe to the feed of Comics in Motion if that's where you're listening, or Genuine Chit-Chat, or Genuine Chit-Chat's YouTube channel. If you're watching there, please like and subscribe and comment and stuff. Or the feed of Star Wars Comics in Canon. I put this everywhere. This is such a great podcast. I want everyone to check it out across all the feeds. But friends, thank you so much for tuning in. As always, thank you, Dave and Maff, again for continuing on this journey with me. It's such a delight hearing your voices and your opinions on these things, and I can't wait to get into more Clone Wars. And to the audience out there, we appreciate you, and as always, may the Force be with you.
Always.